Okay, here we go. I've already introduced you to the basic concept of chiaroscuro, what we call light logic. This again was figured out back in the Renaissance, back in the 15th century, and those brilliant artists of the day kind of figured out how to create the sense of volume and mass of a three-dimensional object on a two-dimensional surface. So I've already gone over with you the different light zones that occur. We've got a light source coming down from this direction, and where that comes in contact with the surface, that's the closest surface to the light source itself. That's where it's going to be the brightest. That's where we're going to see our highlight area. And then as that light or the surface turns away from the light source, we start seeing shadow, gradual shadows occur as again that surface turns away from the light. So it goes from the highlight into this area that we know as the quarter tone. It starts getting a little darker down in here, the area we know as the half tone. Right where that light passes the surface and passes that object is where it transitions from the light side of the hemisphere into the dark side. And that is where we see this core shadow occur, which is the darkest of all the shadows on the sphere itself. Generally speaking, we go from the core shadow into another half tone value until we get down here where this light that is bouncing down off the surface reflects back underneath here. So we have highlight, quarter tone, half tone, core shadow, half tone again, and then the reflected light underneath. So the only thing that's left after that is, of course, the shadow that is cast by the object on the surface that it's sitting on. So, and again, think about how long does that shadow project. That all depends on where your light source is coming from, but it will always be right in line with where it passes the sphere and comes down, and that dictates the length of the cast shadow is your light source, where it comes by, and the light is just passing right there where the core shadow starts. That's where you come, the tangent is, it comes down a straight line from that light source right down to it. Now, we're in artificial light, so it tends to flare the shadow just a little bit. If we were outside and the sun was causing these, the light source, the sun's so far away from us that the light rays travel parallel to each other, and it wouldn't be a flared cast shadow that we see when we're using artificial light. So anyway, let's get started with how to draw. First thing, of course, you're going to want to do is to draw. Kyle, you want to turn on the light? Okay, can we see everything here pretty well?
Yeah.
Yes, okay, we're looking good. So, of course, you're going to find, draw a circle. You can use a template, use some plate or something. You want to draw at least a nice, I'd say a minimum of a 6 or 8 inch circle on your good quality paper, your Strathmore drawing paper. See if I can get myself propped up so we can see this as we go. So, a couple tools you're going to want to have with you. You had a little cotton pad in your kit, so grab one of those, a couple of those. Keep your sandy pad handy, because get your tool sharpened, nice sharp point on there. And then you can start just referring to the sphere. Now I look at it from where I'm at. I see my core shadow, my light is coming down here, and that core shadow seems to occur right about here. I'm just going to give myself a little bit of a trail that light and dark side is happening there. And now I'm just going to lay my pencil. This is another reason why I sharpen my pencils with this nice long taper on here, is because I can lay the pencil over and start laying down a very light wash of value. So I'm just going to really, you want to control your value. Work from, don't get too dark too fast. I'll try to move quickly as possible so we can have plenty of time to draw on our own this evening. But again, I don't want to rush this. Now, to think about this surface, the fact that it's round, again, that light is slowly dissipating and gradually softening as it goes over that surface. So what we want to avoid is any kind of hard transitions. Come over here, kind of just give myself a definition of the light side and the dark side of the sphere. I'll keep building that up slowly. You'll notice also that I indicated a line in the background that runs behind the sphere, which kind of just that I'll eventually use to define the surface that this is sitting on, as well as the background area. Okay, I'm going to start getting a little deeper with that core shadow as it's coming across here. Start building that up just a little bit. Now, you all received a little styrofoam sphere in your kit that we handed out, so hopefully you'll be able to find a light that you can direct on that, and that's strong enough that really you can clearly see these different light zones that we're talking about, and we'll be demonstrating. If we were in our classroom together, I would be able to light this up and we'd all be working from a still life that I'd have set up for you, but during these pandemic times, okay, generally speaking, now I'm in a little bit, I've got this for our filming situation here. I need to put a spotlight on my board so you guys can see what I'm doing, and that's kind of obscuring my shadows a little bit, so I'm going to have to rely a little bit on my intellectual knowledge of how these core shadows work. So I know that I've got this reflected light down around here along the bottom, so I'm leaving that area light, and I'm going to build up, and these core shadows tend to start up here and they tend to peter out a little bit over in this region because it's still getting a lot of that reflected light up in this area, so it's almost kind of comes to not a point, but it starts, the core shadow starts dissipating over in this region here. Now let me go up here. Though, yes, this is all in light on this side of the sphere, but there is still very, very subtle value, so I'm going to start actually pulling a little bit, laying down a little bit of value, and kind of imagine the direction that that surface is going when you're laying down that wash of value. So this would be my very, very faint quarter tone up here. Gets a little bit deeper into my half tone, right where it comes into and transitions into the core shadow. We're not going to get in a hurry, folks. This should be a relaxing experience for you, and just gradually work those values up slowly. Okay, I'm going to start leaning on my pencil again, a little bit, put a little bit of pressure, and start pushing that core shadow again a little more. It's going to be darkest right about back here, because this is, think about this, light's traveling down here. That area where it passes by from the light hemisphere into the dark side is getting the least influence of light, so that's where it is going to be darkest. And then it's going to, again, expand down around the girth of the sphere. To a half tone. I'm going to introduce us to another couple of tools that we use. One, unfortunately, we were not able to include in your little kits, but is a very important and useful tool that all draftsmen use, especially graphite and pencil artists. We call a tortillon, or a drawing stump, blending stump. That's this object right here. It's a nice little, it's a cotton paper rag drawing tool that we can use to, again, create a blending of these values. So I'm going to use this to kind of emphasize and darken my core shadow. Just lightly laying it on there. I'm not really pushing hard at all. Doesn't take much pressure. I back off. I want this nice transition into that halftone on the back. And the harder I press down, the denser it will become. So I'm going to use that blending stump to kind of bump up and punch up my core shadow. Again, backing up, because these transitions are smooth transitions. What I see often with the first students that have not done this before is they tend to get real hard edged lines. Keep in mind that sphere, that surface is turning very gradually away from the light, so hence your transitions are going to be very, very smooth from one into the other. So I'm just taking the graphite that I've laid down on that surface and slowly using this stump in very light, very delicate touch. Get a gradual transition up into that halftone region. I'll probably come back in here and lay down some more graphite on that core shadow so I can get even punchier with it. It's beginning to show. I probably got enough so I can bring that halftone all the way down here. Again, leaving this area down here for the reflected light that bounces up off of the surface onto the back side of the and underside of that sphere. We're pretty lucky today. So far we've had the trash truck drive by with its reverse beepers going. We had a leaf blower earlier, so hopefully we're good to go. I hire my good friend Chris here to come over and do my filming. He's very gracious to offer his time for me. For the big bucks, of course. But
Only big bucks.
yeah, so someday I'll show you some of Chris's work. It's he's a very talented artist, very fun, lyrical kind of work that he does, and not like my serious, heavy stuff that I'm into. Chris, what's your website? Why don't you plug your website while I'm here?
Well, there's 3 W's, www.cuylerart.com, but you gotta spell it CUYLERART.com. Check it out, got a lot of work on there.
you'll find his stuff's real fun. I'm a big fan of his work. But he's not as good as I am.
Different.
So I'm beginning to get the feel for it. Now let me start introducing again a little bit more of that half tone. I'll drag it up here into this quarter tone. I can see that highlight real bright right about there, right about this region here. So I'm actually going to give myself a little bit of a value, just what I picked up on my blending stump. Can bring that around. So very, very, very smooth transition. Okay, I'm going to start adding a little more core shadow. I want to bump that up so get a little bit darker. Core shadows really give that sense of roundness. Once, as I mentioned when I was talking earlier in the PowerPoint, once you start becoming aware of these things that are going on in our physical world and you'll be able to kind of identify them, you'll start seeing them in our natural world. I mean, I never knew about core shadows and light logic, but then once I was aware of it and understood how to use it and how to look for it, I'd start seeing it on lamp posts, on cars, on people. Figures, it's everywhere. These laws of light define our world. It's how we perceive our three-dimensional world out there. So, okay, I'm beginning to get pretty good transition here. Let me see if I can get a little darker with a little more graphite. I'll spread this around with my Tortillon. Horrifying story. This again, yeah, it's called. I was introduced to this tool. It was just called a blending stump or a stump. This is a horrifying story. Back when I was teaching at Ventura, I had this wacky student, this woman, who had apparently had an accident earlier in her life and cut a number of her fingers off. She was missing a couple of her fingers, and I kind of absent-mindedly came along. I was looking at her drawing. I said, well, just use your stump. Oh! She looked up. She held up her hand. I go, oh, God, no. So, I just wanted to die. So, I had to share that little horror story with you guys. Okay, now let's talk about, let's see what else is missing. We see the highlight area, the quarter tone, that half tone, core shadow, half tone, reflected light. What really makes that reflected light pop out is, of course, the contrast of the cast shadow. Now, pay close attention here. Again, as I mentioned, that light is passing by right there and right there. That's going to define the limits of your cast shadow. So right where that core shadow's occurring there, it's going to come straight down. It's going to tell me how long that cast shadow is here, and right where that core shadow kind of dies out here. Now be aware that that's an elliptical shape. Here's our old friend the ellipse again. So as that extends out away from the object, it creates this elliptical shape that is the cast shadow. The back comes around there. You guys are getting a lot of mileage in with our elliptical shape this semester. But it's important. That shape occurs all over the place in the world. So now I'm going to go ahead and start building up that cast shadow. I'm going to come around here. the shadow will be the darkest, of course, right underneath the object that's casting it. And just as I was kind of laying down that wash of value throughout the dark side of the sphere, I'll kind of go in here. Now, as it comes out to this region out here, it starts falling into the ambient light. So it's darkest down around this area where it's closest to, but as it extends away from the object, it starts getting lighter as it gets influenced by the ambient light in the room. And you come up and sneak up to that little boundary right there. So you can see the importance of having a correctly sharpened tool that we can almost kind of work like as a paintbrush, if you will, laying down this wash of value. And I'll come back in here and play with my tortillon, my stump, blending stump, and smooth out those transitions as well. I'll come over here to the edge. Lighter wash. Okay, I grab my eraser. I can get rid of these little lines that I was using to define where that shadow was cast, but we know that that was a direct light. As that light source comes down and dictates the length of that cast shadow. So let me go ahead and start leaning on it here again. It's a little darker right underneath the surface of the object, of course. Now I'm going to grab my stump. What is this going to use here? Very gingerly, very tenderly kind of carry that, smooth that shadow out and get it uniform and consistent looking. So I highly recommend that you either go to Michael's or you go into the student store there on campus and purchase these, a little set of these blending stumps. I like this larger one that's got a point on both ends. I find it more versatile. They've got some very small ones that are made of rolled paper, which I don't really like to use those ones as much. They're not quite as soft as these rag cotton pointed stumps. You could probably go online and order them as well from Dick Blick or Cheap Joe's or one of the other online vendors. Again, I don't want us to rush through this. I want you to take your time. We're learning and develop our sensitivity to value, and you can always go darker later if we find it's necessary, but it's you want to control your drawings. Don't let them get out of hand too quickly or let them get ahead of you. And that most often happens when we go too dark too quick. So I can see that it's quite a bit darker down in this region here, so I'm going to go ahead and lay in a little more value for my pencil. understanding the use of this, and again, this once you've got this practice and you understand where those light zones occur and how they occur, this in combination with understanding the use of perspective, you'll be able to come up with anything right out of your head, draw right out of your imagination. Of course, if it's not an object that you're completely familiar with, you'll want to have some sort of photo reference or have the object in front of you to draw from. But again, once you understand the use of light logic and perspective and the way that things project in space in a three-dimensional illusion, you're only limited by your imagination. Push a little bit harder here. Really bump up that cast shadow. Da-da-da-da. Where are we at time-wise, Kai?
26 and a half minutes.
Okay, we're doing okay. I'll expect all of you to take a lot more than 26 and a half minutes on yours. I've been practicing this for 40 years, so got a little bit of a jump on all of you, but at the same time, I've got to be careful as well. It's not just something that happens automatically. Okay, let me get up here and play with this coarse shadow a little more. You guys don't, and I re-emphasize, don't ever use your finger to do any blending with. Your finger has oils in it, and as soon as you do that, there's going to be a nice big spot, an oily spot, real dark on your surface that will not come out, and it'll be a major distraction. So, word to the wise and heed my word, do not use your fingers to blend. Always use a tool such as a stump or a cotton pad. Another tool that we use is called a chamois, which is just like it's an animal hide that we use for drawing our cars. Of course, they're not that big, but so you can see I've got a little bit of a harsh line right there, and a little bit of a harsh line blending into that halftone. So let me see if I can soften that a little bit. This is where your kneaded eraser is a wonderful tool. This is my go-to eraser because you can, number one, with as opposed to the pink pearl eraser, when you use it, it leaves a bunch of debris behind. You can just dab with your kneaded eraser and pull medium, very controlled, pull off graphite. I can soften that edge, that transition there. If there's any really dark areas. You just really want to be careful not to create any really hard transitions. The idea here is to lose your contour line. In our real world, we don't see contour lines surrounding everything that we're looking at. It's all defined by light and shadow. It's how we perceive our world. Okay, now I want to see this transition down here into the little more gracefully into that half tone, or down into that reflected light area. Nice thing about working with your pencil this way is it always leaves your nice, soft, rich, dark pencil with a nice point on it that you can get on and do line work when you're so inclined. Of course, we're not going to do any real hard line work on the sphere because we wouldn't see any line. Okay, let's see if I can softly transition that, blend that. And I'm barely just, it's just almost the weight of that stump laying on the surface. I'm not even really pushing on it. I'm just using it to move around very gently that graphite that I've laid down. See a little mark there that's bothering me, a little harsh line that I've created. So here again, kind of make a little point with my kneaded eraser and very carefully go in there. Move that. The other little areas that'll look a little dark. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and lean on this pencil and really lean on this core shadow back here. So what else is going on, folks? I'm kind of excited. Today at 4:30 I get to go get my hair cut for the first time since the pandemic struck. Decided I'm kind of tired of this old hippie look. Get back to a decent looking haircut. I've been trying to cut my own hair for and it's a disaster, so kind of excited about that. Of course, since we'll be looking at this whole project, you'll be seeing me with this new haircut that I'm talking about right now. So, okay, we're getting close. We're getting close. Go ahead and bring that reflected light looks a little bright to me down here. I'm going to go ahead and just pull some medium down into this area here. Go around and look for, soften my transitions. Only area that I'm leaving without any value at all. And again, look at how I'm using my tool. I'm trying to kind of imagine the way that the surface is going. So that's how you want to use your tool and make marks that kind of define the direction that surfaces move. curving up in this direction. Decided I want to get just a little bit darker down around this region. Make that reflected light pop a little bit more. Grab my little cotton pad here and see if I can use that to move some material around and soften that transition. Go over that entire area. Look at, we've turned our circle into a sphere. I'm easily entertained. After all these years, it still excites me to see something turn from a circle into something round and three-dimensional. Don't laugh at me, Kai. Bet you didn't know about how to do this today. You learned something too. Admit it.
I took drawing classes.
Okay, so last little thing I want to talk about is our background. How can we really make this light hemisphere pop out? We want to create this light surface, the flat surface that it's sitting on. Here's another little trick that I do. That let me set this right here for a moment. And you can do this with a regular piece of paper. So what you do is, I'm using tracing paper, and I took the template that I used to create that circle and just drew a circle on. You can do this on regular paper as well. Make sure that you get your horizon line lined up properly, and so that you can lay that over the top. Basically, you're going to create a mask that we can go ahead and lay down. Now, I don't want to cut this on the drawing, of course, so take your X-Acto knife, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut out the area that is above the surface, the horizon line area. Very carefully trace that line with your X-Acto knife. Come down to where that surface is. I'll use my straight edge here. Oops. Back. Get rid of that. Get my drawing back up here. Lay that down over my drawing. Line that little horizon line up. Make sure it's covering the sphere. Now I'm going to take my cotton pad and go over to my sanding pad and borrow some graphite from that. maybe check it down here, and working from the paper, going off of the paper, and keep borrowing some more.
Tricky.
Get some more graphite on my sanding pad there. Sharpen that pencil for my next drawing. Give just a little bit of a vignette of value. Whoa, boom, now we've got our light zones completed and everything looks complete. So, you want to go ahead and lay this down here and add a little bit more over here. Just let that kind of peter out there. And there you go, chiaroscuro, light logic in all its glory. So this is what we're going to be doing this evening, spending the rest of our time going and working on, get your good drawing paper, find a nice circle that you can use as a template, create the circle, give yourself a horizon line behind it, and then just start gradually working up your light zones. Highlight, quarter tone, half tone, core shadow, half tone, reflected light, cast shadow. Those are the rules that you'll remember and be able to pull off amazing drawings. So that's it, folks. Oops. Thanks, Kai.
Yeah, let's get a better shot.
Okay, yeah, zoom in on that if you can.
Let's see.
Turn that for you.
That works. Cool. All right.
Okay. All right, everybody. I'll see you back in class.